Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr. This is the On the Stacks podcast.
Oh yeah, whoa, look, they can never keep me down, I'm going, and if I ever fail, just know I'll go again. I never quit, cause I know that every loss may lead to another win. I'm going up.
This week's episode is a previously live Q&A that I moderated at the FM Kirby Center in Wilkes-Barre following the showing of the documentary film Walk with Frank. The Q&A features film subject and Vietnam War veteran Frank Romeo and filmmakers and co-owners of Mayers Films, Matt and Ryan Mayers. Walk with Frank is a film about self-discovery, mental health, and one man's journey towards understanding and embracing his own PTSD. In the Q&A, we discuss the impact the film has had on Frank's life, the ongoing struggles veterans face, and ways we can keep the conversation going to end the stigma of mental health and to inspire others to open up about their own mental illness. Also, just a quick note before we start. In this episode, we talk about some pretty heavy subject matter, including PTSD and suicide, so viewer discretion is advised. This episode would not be possible without the support of our sponsors, so please check them out in the show notes. I'm your host, Bill Corcoran Jr., and this is Frank Romeo on the Stacks.
So the art therapy helped me, and art saved my life. I was suicidal. There came a point in my life when, I lost the business. My home went into foreclosure. My wife left me, and so I was suicidal. And luckily, I found art. My brother ran away from me. My mother and father ran away from me. And, I was not a nice person, and I didn't even have a family then, and I was just really bad. And I put them through the ringer, and they're not with me anymore, and I wish I could change it, but I can't. But I have reconciled with them. I apologize to them for any number of things I've done. This film is an apology. I've apologized to a lot of people, and this film is an apology. And that's who I was. Okay, and I was abusive to my parents and to my children and to my first wife. I can't change it, but I can make tomorrow better, and maybe I can make someone else's life a little better.
This episode is brought to you by Sweat Tent, the pioneers of the portable wood-burning sauna. Did you know that using the sauna 3 to 4 times per week could reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by up to 50% and make you 60% less likely to experience Alzheimer's disease? That's why I've been a big fan of the sauna for years. But having to go to a crowded gym to do it isn't ideal. And all the at-home options are bulky and expensive. That's why I only use the Sweat Tent for my sauna needs. It's the most storable and affordable wood-burning sauna on the market. It not only takes minutes to set up, but it can reach 200 degrees Fahrenheit in 30 minutes or less. So whether you're enjoying it yourself in your backyard, with friends, or in need of a reliable sauna on the go, Sweat Tent is your best choice for the most portable, storable, and enjoyable outdoor sauna experience. All On The Stacks listeners will receive $100 off when you use code OTS. Visit sweattent.com today to get $100 off your purchase with code OTS at checkout. Again, that's sweattent.com to get $100 off with code OTS. Sweat Tent, helping you fire up your home wellness routine. This episode is brought to you by Burn, the fitness company behind the Today Show approved Burn board. If I'm being honest, working out can be a real chore, especially as a new dad in desperate need of sleep and cardio. Burn is founded by NEPA native Jimmy T. Martin, and his Burn board offers a low-impact core and cardio experience unlike anything I've done before. They have hundreds of on-demand workouts that are great for beginners, seasoned athletes, and out-of-shape podcast hosts who love supporting small businesses. My wife and I use it pretty frequently throughout the week, and it's honestly a great way to burn a ton of calories without burning a ton of cash. Not to mention, it's a great tool for skiers, runners, wrestlers, and hockey players. Jimmy is offering all On The Stacks listeners 15% off when they use the code STACKS15. Visit theburn.com today to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15 at checkout. Again, that's theburn, THEBRRN.com to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15. It's time to get on board today with Burn. This episode is brought to you by Kavanaugh's Grill, one of my favorite places to eat and drink in NEPA. They've got one of the best outdoor patios with 13 TVs and over 20 beers on tap. You can also dine inside at this cozy Irish-style pub where your beer never goes empty. Did I mention how delicious their food is? Their in-house smoked brisket, barbecue ribs, and wings are to die for. So grab your friends and have a drink on me at Kavanaugh's. Mention code STACKS for one free draft beer with purchase of any entree when you dine in. Located at 163 North Main Street in Mountaintop, Kavanaugh's is open at 4 p.m. during the week and 12 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday during football season. Dine in today at Mountaintop's only Irish-style pub.
I'd like to welcome Bill Corcoran Jr. to the stage, the host of the OnTheStacks podcast, my brother Matt, and the star of the show, Frank Romeo.
I'm really honored to be here tonight. I met Matt and Ryan about a year and a half ago. They were guests on the show, episode 81 to be exact, if anyone wants to go back. And you know, it's kind of surreal because when they were on the show, I remember you guys talking about Frank, and I remember you guys talking about this film. And now this whole thing, for me and for us and for you, has come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, the whole journey, you could see from beginning to end, the whole thing was full circle. You know, if we talk about how we started off with no support, not a lot of people out there to even speak to or to listen to what we're doing. And as we kind of got closer to the city, it all kind of culminated to this, you know, amazing hometown reunion and welcome home for Frank, which was, you know, really inspiring. And, you know, we feel the same way. Bringing it to Wilkes-Barre, we feel like it's, you know, a chance for us to bring this work that we've been doing to our town and for you guys to see it personally. And like I said earlier, from each town we go to, we impact people and we make a change. So it's these little, you know, we're doing this little by little, but each screening and each event really does make a difference.
And creating a film is always a journey, and there is a beginning, middle, and end to the journey, but it's continuing. Like Frank moves forward, we're moving forward with the film and with the educational program. So it's really a continuing process. It's not, I mean, it's a great feeling to be here, and it's amazing to be in Wilkes-Barre, but it's not the culmination.
One thing we always say, and it's become just a thing we say for everything, is keep the conversation going. And what we mean by that is, you know, it's so easy to have these events and have these conversations during Mental Health Awareness Month, during Memorial Day, Veterans Day, but we have to keep this conversation going on a day-to-day basis, and that's really what we're trying to do. So,
yeah, and congratulations, by the way. I mean, it's
Thank you.
Really impressive. I mean, I enjoyed the film myself, and Frank, welcome to Wilkes-Barre.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone from Wilkes-Barre. It's awesome. I grew up in a town like Wilkes-Barre, out on Long Island, so I brought these guys to meet my friends. You know, my childhood friends. You met some of them in the film, but there are a lot of people behind the scenes, my childhood friends that were financial supporters and advertising supporters and promoters, and so there was a small town feeling to this whole event. And after my 50-year high school reunion, which was 5 years ago, all my classmates realized what I was doing, and they all offered to help, and you met some of them in the film. So coming to Wilkes-Barre is like being home. It's got a same vibe to it. And I've met Matt and Ryan's childhood friends, and they've met my childhood friends, and it's a good feeling. So I thank you.
And also the way that, you know, you saw Mike and Nadine, who are amazing people. They've hiked like pretty much every mountain trail. They've hiked, you know, done Mount Everest and pretty much everything you can imagine. Frank grew up with them, and the way that they, without even a question, without discussing it, jumped on board and supported, and we felt that same from every single person in this room. So, like Frank said, it's the community and it's this kind of support that really makes this a success. So, thank you.
And Frank, you got to experience the Fine Arts Fiesta the last couple days. How's that been?
Windy. My artwork blew down several times. I was taping artwork all for the last 2 days. It was nice to meet a lot of people, and a lot of people stopped by our booth. A lot of people shared their stories, because this is a safe place, and we've screened in all 50 states so far. And inevitably, after every event, there's this safe place feeling where you can share a story and you could ask a personal question of me or the guys, and feel that safeness of it, and we pride ourselves on that. So,
how has that experience and that journey been like? You know, as you guys have been doing these shows and these Q&As, you know, as you've been traveling around to other states, What has the experience been like for each of you? I'm sure there's been you've each probably experienced and got something different out of it, but I'm just curious to know what your experience was like, each of you.
I mean, it's always a new experience, and for me, not being a veteran, and for Matt, I'm sure as well, it's eye-opening and inspiring and kind of unbelievable and amazing to hear the stories and to get kind of, to meet these people, veterans that have served our country, that, what they sacrifice and what they deal with. And I think for myself as a civilian, and, I think for myself, I didn't know the extent of it, of what a veteran deals with. And so that is the biggest takeaway. It's like, wow. And everybody is just amazing that we've met. So, I just hope that more people, maybe from the film, maybe just from reaching out to the veterans in your community, maybe you'll get to know people like we have. I hope that people have that opportunity, or maybe are inspired by the film to speak to someone that they haven't spoken to before.
For me, it's really been going from state to state, and even just within our own state of New York, how different the people are, how different the issues are, and there is no, you don't hear the same story twice. Everything is so unique. Even this week at the Fine Arts Fiesta, everyone's issue is different, everyone's suffering different, everyone deals different, and everyone's process to move forward is different. So, the thing that I've seen from state to state is not just how different that is, but how different the levels of treatment and support are, the availability in these states. Some have great facilities, some don't. So, like one of the gentlemen said in our film is just like, some people are looking at numbers and just trying to get through as many appointments in a day and giving the same treatment to these veterans. And, it's not going to work. These people need catered treatment to what their issues are, and it's just not working. So that's what I've seen, is just how different the support is around the country, and just, how many different levels depending on where you live.
I think what we're trying to do, and what we've seen in other states, is bridging the gap between the veteran and non-veteran. And veterans make up about 7% of our population here in America, and we feel it's important to educate the other 93% if you're going to help the veteran. We need to bridge that gap. And we find that throughout the country, that different states, there's a different attitude. And in more down south, we see there's more of a veteran-orientated base to each community that we're in. It's a little bit different up north. And so it's different around the entire country. But the idea is to bridge that gap. So we're going to help each other and push for that.
And to connect some dots. Like, we've been in some towns in Kentucky. We had a group of people, that just weren't aware of each other, that were trying to fulfill the same mission. So we were able to say, well, you have the transportation and these guys need it. Why don't you work together? So it was really amazing to see, able to facilitate some of these things and hope for, add to some support in these towns.
It was almost like, and that's a particular case that he's talking about. So it took the film and us to have an event like this, a town hall, if you will, where two people in the audience said, oh, I have veterans, oh, I have transportation, oh, I have an old barn, and from this, they got together and created something, that safe place. So it's kind of really heartfelt. It's cool that we could impact such communities, and we don't know these people. We meet them as we travel.
And like Ryan said, we need more non-veterans supporting. I mean, we had sort of felt when we started this, there was a sort of hesitation, or I don't know, feeling like we weren't deserving of being there and hearing some of these stories because we haven't served. What we found out during the course of this project is that they appreciated that even more because we hadn't served. Like, they need people that haven't served to be out there supporting them too, because if it's just veterans supporting them, it's just veterans listening, and we need everyone involved to be able to solve this.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and like, just going back to, we didn't even know each other, up until I had you guys on my show. And I'm not a veteran myself either, but I've done about 160 episodes so far of my show over the last 3 years, and I've had a number of veterans on the show, even some active duty as well. And I'm a big supporter of military veterans and first responders, everybody, and mental health. It's such a common theme, and just mental health in general. Like, it's, as you guys are saying, like, it's not talked about enough. And like I said, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here, alongside all of you to be able to continue this conversation.
Yeah, veterans appreciate it more than you even realize. And the most I heard during the walk, and the guys that we talked to, was, so many people say thank you for your support, or put a bumper sticker on their car that says we support our troops. But it generally ends there, and they would love it. And again, with keep the conversation going that we're always saying, it's ask another question, ask how they're doing, ask what they're up to now, they have a family. Like, you'll be surprised how these guys will open up and just start talking, and, taking this philosophy forward. Ryan and I mean, not just in the way that we approach everything that we do now, but like, it's about connecting, and the more you can connect and ask those questions, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to understand, and the more empathy you're going to have. And I just think, the more that we could spread that, I think it's needed right now.
Yeah, the connection is definitely really important, and I think you all kind of touched on it, but just having these conversations, and there might be somebody in the audience here that may connect with something somebody here said, and you're going to go home and you're going to tell somebody else about it, and you're going to continue that conversation. And I think it's kind of like a network. It's like we're building a network. I never thought a year and a half ago when I had you guys on my show that I'd be sitting here today, but I am. And I just think it's so important.
So much of it is about taking that chance and putting aside the fear. So a lot of that barrier that exists between veterans and non-veterans is a fear. It's a fear of they're not going to understand what I went through, and it's a fear of they're not. I can't talk because I don't know what question I'm going to ask, and I don't want to offend the person. And the one thing that Frank really inspired us with is to really let go of those fears and open yourself up to listen and to learn. And honestly, in just the last 4 years knowing Frank, just approaching life that way has opened up so many opportunities, and just knowing and learning and getting to know people, and like you said, just connecting with the world around you.
Frank, I want to talk a little bit and have you talk a little bit about the art therapy and the curriculum that you've worked on. Can you talk to us about that for a few minutes?
So 50 years ago, there was no such thing as art therapy, and basically, now you could get a doctorate in art therapy. And so the Vietnam veteran, like myself, but I'm just one, but a whole generation of men created the artwork, and some of it you see out in the lobby. They chronicled their life. Their journal was created in art, only for lack of another resource, for lack of another way of getting their message out. And we created this phenomenal artwork. And basically, when it was made, it wasn't supposed to see the light of day. It was cathartic, and no one was ever meant to see my work, because it was my personal diary. And eventually, of course, it surfaced, and it took on a life of its own. So the art therapy helped me. And so it grew, and today, we have children doing art therapy, and we're using art therapy in all avenues of life, and to help with the trauma, not just trauma, but learning experiences and disabilities, and we're using art therapy. Art saved my life. I was suicidal. There came a point in my life when, I lost the business. My home went into foreclosure. My wife left me, and so I was suicidal. And luckily, I found art, and it helped me to work through. It opened up this whole avenue for me to share my story and get my message out. So art therapy is really saved my life.
And Frank, I thought it was so interesting. I stopped by yesterday at the Fine Arts Fiesta, and I don't know who said it. One of you said it, but as I was seeing your artwork, as you guys were setting it up, you said that had been the first time that anyone had seen your artwork in public, and I was like, wait a second, what? And you said you guys had never taken, besides it being in the film that we just saw, your artwork has never been seen in public before.
It's true. So part of coming here, the festival, the Fiesta Arts Council, wanted my original artwork to be shown, and so I've never shown my artwork until yesterday, and it just for the first time it's been out in over 30 years since I started it, and thanks to these guys. And
yeah, Frank had the one painting, Y, which was the man with the hand over his mouth. That was the one that was featured later on after he'd been painting a while. They featured that in the National Veterans Art Museum. But all the stuff that you saw of his Vietnam paintings, that was stuff that he had stashed in the closet. Even as we were doing the project, he was telling us about those, and we had not seen them until the very end of production when we realized we need to have those paintings in the film. And really, to me, that's the most powerful part. Like, that's the part where I just still well up and, you know, just...
as open as Frank is, and as open as he was throughout the entire walk, there were definitely times that he would tell us stories and we'd be like, oh my God, like I had no idea. And throughout the process of getting to know Frank, I feel like he was able to open up more to us about his story. Don't you think? I mean, in the beginning, like we didn't know anything about like Fort Dix. Or
I have a lot of stories. And so, and you know, we'd be doing something and we'd be, you know, walking, or we'd be editing or something,
or eating dinner or something.
Yeah,
you tell us
anything. And I'd say, you know, that reminds me, and I'd tell this phenomenal
like,
story.
why didn't you tell us that earlier? It could have been in the movie. No, there's a lot that didn't make the movie. You know, there's a lot about just in Frank's history and what happened. And you know, when you're making a film, you have to pick and choose. But you know, we tried to find the most cohesive way to tell the story, but also from a production standpoint, trying to go back and forth. You know, we wanted it to almost have that flashback element. You know, Frank's constantly talking about how, you know, these thoughts are always in his head. So we wanted to sort of show this walk happening, but sort of coinciding and bouncing back to those feelings that he was having, which he has all the time. I mean, you know, him telling me that story late at night, you know, when he couldn't sleep, and about that nightmare. I mean, those were the moments that we had where I was just like, you know, this is all unbelievable, you know, and how do we do this? How do we serve it justice to tell this story?
Or when we would meet somebody, like in Richard's house, we met that man Kevin, and you know, it was late at night, and we were just kind of hanging around and seeing if there was anyone that might want to talk. And Kevin came out to get a snack and started talking to us, and just the way that Frank was able to get him to open up, along with other people. It was just really inspiring to see and to be a part of.
And we talk about, you know, the fact that we keep doing this again, like COVID. We had, the program was basically funded. We were gonna have this educational curriculum across New York State. It was like it was about to be approved. Then COVID hit. Away goes our money. We were kind of back to square one. So it's, you know, again, since the film, it's sort of like it was a culmination. It was this great moment. We had everyone on board, and then it was sort of like, okay, now we got to start from scratch with this film. Yeah, it was. It's been a journey. So that being said, some of those guys, again, during COVID, you know, Kevin, Doc, you know, we followed their journey. We kept in touch. Some of these guys didn't do so well since then. Some of the guys have not made it. So, you know, we lost some of our friends that we met along the way, and it's all part of the journey. You know, it's just trying to, you know, keep that connection and keep moving and make sure we can reach the next guy, you know.
On the Stacks will be back in a flash after a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Elevation Wellness, NEPA's premier wellness center located on Mundy Street in Wilkes-Barre. From pro athletes to busy parents, Elevation Wellness is leading the conversation when it comes to bettering your health through integrative medicine. Founded by NEPA native Louis Helmecke, Elevation Wellness offers physician-formulated and guided treatments that are administered by registered nurses. To learn more about how you can experience the benefits of IV vitamin therapy, multivitamin booster shots, non-invasive aesthetics, or peptide, NAD, red light, and compression therapy, visit elevation-wellness.com or follow them on Instagram at elevationwellnessnepa. All On the Stacks listeners will receive 10% off their first purchase with code STACKS at checkout. Call 570-762-9400 or visit elevation-wellness.com to book your appointment today. Elevation Wellness, taking your health to new heights. Welcome to the future. While you're hearing this ad in the present, the Center for Technology Innovation at Lackawanna College is preparing students for the jobs of tomorrow in the world of advanced technology. The Center for Technology Innovation will offer undergraduate degree programs, corporate training, as well as short-term stackable certificates in areas such as robotics, cybersecurity, electric vehicles, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. Based at a 90,000 square foot facility in downtown Scranton, Pennsylvania, the Center for Technology Innovation is located 2 hours from the major cities of New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, and is just 15 minutes from a commercial airport in a region thriving with tourist attractions and a vibrant restaurant, educational, and cultural scene. Lackawanna College is a proven industry-leading innovator. But don't just take my word for it. Fast Company even recognized Lackawanna College's reputation for innovation by naming them to their top 10 list as one of the world's most innovative companies. For more information or to enroll, call 877-346-3552 or visit lackawanna.edu.
I have the privilege of representing people who have been injured through no fault of their own, and they come to us and they place a lot of trust in us, and we represent them against corporations and insurance companies, and we make those companies know that our clients have a story, that they deserve compensation, and I'm proud to be able to do that for our clients at Anzalone Law.
To learn more, visit Anzalone Law offices online at anzalonelaw.com. And now we're back on the stacks.
The two featured homeless veterans in Richard's house, Doc, who was in school, and he went on to become a nurse in a critical ward unit during COVID, and he did very well. And Kevin, the asteroid man, Kevin committed suicide during post-production. And so that day, they were all upbeat. That day, they were sharing with me. We followed their story afterwards. So in essence, you know, you don't know who you're talking to. And that goes for your partner, your friends, your boss. You don't know what's going on in the mind of that other person, you know. So be gentle with each other. Because, you know, from learning from those two men in Richard's house taught me a life lesson. And I didn't see it. And we failed Kevin. And society failed Kevin, and so I failed Kevin, and so. But be kind to each other.
That's a great message, Frank. You know, I often say you never know what somebody's going through, and you know it may sound cliche, but it's so true. And you know, if you think somebody might be struggling, just have a conversation. Just check in on somebody because it can go a long way. So you know, keep that in mind and. You know, just always, you know, look out for that because you just don't know. You literally you just don't know what somebody's going through, and it could even be your spouse, and you may not know that. So
no one could know. And the other thing is that people like to politicize these type of things, veterans, you know, veteran care, mental health, whatever it is. People try to, you know, politicize it, and this is not a political issue. And we've been really, you know, clear about that. And Frank's always said this is not about politics. I mean, obviously you deal with, you know, politics to try to get funding and to try to get things like that done. But veteran support is something that we should all be on board. I mean, these are people that are defending us and, you know, and defending our country and sacrificing themselves. So it's not political.
And mental health in general, you know, it's not just veterans, and it's not just PTSD. It's, you know, we have children that are, you know, dealing with their own mental issues, and you know, it's really difficult in this country to get any kind of help when you're talking about mental health. So it needs to change. You know, it just needs to change, and it's not changing, like Frank said, it's not changing from the top down. It's got to change from the ground up. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, Frank always said that, you know, if you have a broken bone or something, or a you know, cancer, you would talk about it. People are more open, but mental health is something that we keep to ourselves. So no one knows what anyone else is dealing with because we're not talking about it. So the idea of making it a common conversation and breaking the stigma is another big message that Frank has taught us.
Talking about mental health the way we do physical health. It's that simple. Just a conversation. Keep the conversation going. You know, it's not just okay to say thank you for your service. You should follow it up with, do you need anything? Or how are you? Or who are you? Guaranteed you'll open up a conversation. Keep the conversation going.
I like to just ask, where did they serve? What did they do? You know, where were you stationed? You know, what years were you in there? Like, they just love answering those questions, and that just leads to the conversation. It's just take that next step.
Frank, how has the you know, since the walk or during the walk, during the filming, and now how has that affected your family? We saw your family, a little bit in the film, your kids. What type of impact has this journey, as of recently, how has it affected your family?
Well, I have 7 children and a beautiful wife, and they all embraced what I was doing, and they all come to my events if it's local within them, within their area. But on the walk, they travel from all over the country, to be a part of it. We deal like any family with personal issues. We're going through something now. It's very personal to us, and we all rally around each other. I think, if anything, my children have learned, and it wasn't fun for them growing up. I was abusive. I was not a nice person. I abused them emotionally, physically, and so and being ill is not. I don't think that's a reason that I could give. And so, we've learned from that, and they know I'm just as vulnerable as they are. Dad doesn't have all the answers. And so we appreciate that. So even when I'm down, I'll call them and they'll call me. So we've created this network thread that goes every day, and we're all on it every day, and we just check in on each other. And you should check in on other people, too. So if you're thinking about someone, check in on them. You never know. I mean, Matt and Ryan have met my whole family. They know them. It's just, as good as anyone does.
How about you guys? How has this film impacted your lives?
In every way possible. I mean,
yeah, we always joke about what would Frank do in a situation. We always think that, and we say it to each other. And I think the first thing is just being open. I mean, it's hard for me to be open. I'm kind of a closed person. I tend to hold things in and keep it to myself. And just being around Frank, it's been inspiring to just say, okay, maybe talk about the things that you're dealing with, because maybe someone will understand. And how could they understand if you don't talk? So that, I think, is the big takeaway that I've had from.
Yeah, for me, it's just really about taking chances, like dropping that fear and taking that chance. Since I've met Frank, there's been so many things where I'm just like, I'm absolutely going to do that thing that maybe I was afraid to do, because there's no reason not to. Frank showed me that it's getting past the fear that allow good things to happen. And since then, every single good thing has happened from taking chances and putting myself out there. I mean, being on stage right now and doing this talk, it's, would not have been me 10 years ago. So it's just putting yourself out there, taking the chance, living the life. Like you said, life's an adventure, and if you just don't go enjoy every day, you're missing out.
Yeah, and just being vulnerable. I forget who said the word vulnerable before, but one of you did. Yeah. And I think that's so important. I think if you're willing to be vulnerable, put yourself in an uncomfortable position, I think it'll give somebody else the courage to do that. And just with my show, my podcast. Anytime I've had somebody on the show that's just been vulnerable, yeah. it gave the next person the courage to say, hey, I could do that too.
You're opening yourself. When you open yourself, you're allowing energy and info in. So the more you open, the more you're learning, the more you're experiencing in life.
It's probably the hardest thing to do. It's definitely not easy. But like you guys said, there's a reward if you can get to that place.
We'd love to open it up if we can.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is there anyone in the audience that may have a question for the guys up here?
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yes.
Joe Wyszynski. How did you guys get connected with Frank in the first place?
So the cinematographer that we used in the film, Richard, introduced Frank to me when Frank was trying to raise money and awareness for the walk itself. So he wanted to make a video to just talk about what he was doing. And when I met Frank, I was just really kind of blown away by who he was and what he was doing. And so I started talking to Matt about possibly doing a documentary on it. And Frank was, open to the idea of us following him. And one thing led to another, and then we just jumped on board. I mean, he welcomed us.
Yeah, there was one day I remember where Frank was going to come from Long Island to my house in Weehawken, and we were going to Zoom Ryan so that at least I could meet Frank in person. Ryan had already met him, and then Ryan was going to get on the phone. And Frank, I mean, we sat there and we just like totally hit it off that day. I remember you leaving thinking like, I've got a new best friend, whether or not I do this project. But we were also looking to do something, you know, something that was feature length, something that was important, that we cared about, because when you do a film, you're all in on it. You know, for years, we didn't realize we were going to be all in on it for the rest of our lives, because, you know, everything, whatever he does from now on, we're totally on board. But that was it. It was really just kind of serendipity.
That was the hook. Now I got them. They, but they're the nicest guys ever, and dedicated. And so in post-production, you know, during editing, so this film could have been like 4 days long. I mean, there's 3.5 months sometimes of, you know, I had a camera, Richard had a camera, these two guys had cameras. So we had, Mike and Nadine had a camera. So there's literally 3.5 months of a possibility of 5 or 6 cameras getting shots. These guys sift through every minute of every shot, day after day. And we'd go back and forth. We'd talk during the editing process. I mean, we were texting all night long.
Well, to Frank's credit, you know, he's documented his entire life. So all those papers, every, you know, his evacuation order to Camp Zama, all the treatment that he's had, all the drugs that he was prescribed, you know, Frank basically showed up on my door one day with a box this big of papers and Post-its labeling what everything was. So it was not just telling the story, but it was like, how do we show this? Like, you know, here's a man who documented the history, not just of himself, but really the evolution of PTSD as we know it today. And how can we honor that, you know? So yeah, it was quite a lot. But.
Ryan, I have one more question. I know you talked about the funding that you guys lost because of the pandemic, but do you guys ever think that you guys would be benefactors of the pandemic because of your message in this platform?
Well, we've definitely seen that, and Frank saw it coming. He said, he called it the pandemic after the pandemic. He said it's going to be a pandemic of mental health.
Yeah, he mentioned it on week 1 of COVID. You're right. He had called it out.
Yeah. I call this period we're living in the PTSD pandemic. This is the crisis after the crisis. And I know through my experiences, when I was in the throes of it, like we are now coming off the pandemic, you know, I didn't know right from wrong. I didn't know what to do. I was confused. And you saw it in the film. That period after my trauma was very confusing. So I believe we're in this mental health crisis now, the PTSD pandemic, and we're not even aware of it. We really haven't come to terms with it, the scope of what we went through, the people that we didn't say goodbye to when they died because of COVID, you know, and the lockdowns. You know, don't forget, we locked down mental health, we locked down child abuse, domestic violence. We've locked down a lot of things. And so the ramifications of that, we're not going to know for a while. So, you know, we're in a shitstorm. That's how I see it. And the sooner we understand that we're in a mental health crisis in this country. Just watch the news. It's crazy.
And there's also, you know, yeah, they're talking about it every day on the news, but there's no funding. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to put the money or where to put the funds. So it's like Frank said, it's a shit show right now.
What happened, so when COVID hit, so I was getting funding from the New York State Board of Education, $500,000, and so that was going, you know, into Walk with Frank, so we could do this film and get my education program, first of its kind in the country, which was already being taught in schools, still is, and get that out there to every school district in New York State. COVID hit, and Governor Cuomo just ransacked the education budget, and he took away all our funding. And so we, like he said, we were back to square one. What do we do now? We got no money. You know, we started all over again, and we pulled it out.
You had mentioned that you had been abusive to your parents when you were going through this. Did you ever have the opportunity to reconcile that with them?
The question was he asked if Frank had ever reconciled with your parents after
My parents.
your parents.
Your brother told a story about you giving them.
Yes, I reconciled with my parents. I was terrible. I mean, I was not. they ran away from me. You know, my brother ran away from me, my mother and father ran away from me, and good for them. They should have, because I was a handful. You know, I was not a nice person, you know, and I didn't even have a family then, and I was just really bad. And I put them through the ringer, and you know, they're not with me anymore, and I wish I could change it, but I can't. And so, but I have reconciled with them. I apologize to them for any number of things I've done. You know what? This film is an apology. I've apologized to a lot of people, and this film is an apology. And you know, that's who I was. Okay, and I was abusive to my parents and to my children and to my first wife. And so, you know, that it's what it is. I can't change it, but I can make tomorrow better, and maybe I can make someone else's life a little better. So that's where I'm coming from.
I think there was someone a little further back. Yep.
What I had a question about is the support that you had as you were walking on like day one, as you noted, it was like 0, and then towards the end there were like fire trucks and all these people supporting you. What changed? How did the word get out? Like, how did that go from snowflakes and you to everything?
Yeah, Buffalo was not fun. And these guys, wait, before I tell you how that happened, and these guys followed me. I mean, you know, I had gloves on, or my hands were in my pocket. Yeah, I'm the guy walking. But these guys, they had those gloves with the fingertips that stick out so they could work the camera, and their fingertips were blue. I'm telling you, these guys went through it all. The Niagara River was frozen. Niagara Falls was frozen. There was an 18-foot high wall of ice heading off Lake Erie into downtown Buffalo. It was really not fun. So they would jump in and out, Richard, Matt, and Ryan. So they would take turns following me, and one would come for a week, one would leave, and you know, and they'd figured all that out. But I was alone. There was no help. The only help I had was from my classmates and my ground support team, and they were nice enough. You saw Nadine walk with me on a few days, but basically I was out there alone. Once I got to speak on the Senate floor, and you saw it in the film, that changed everything. So I think once I got the recognition from the New York State Senate, and then I headed down the Mid-Hudson Valley. By the time I got to New York City, I was on the front page of every newspaper, and we were getting support. And a lot of the interviews, there was no studio time. Everything you saw in this film was on the road, was walking. No one got sat down in the studio. Everyone was either coming or going or just taking a break, and they got interviewed, and they put it together. So coming down the Mid-Hudson Valley, that's when it really started to morph into a mental health movement. And then, of course, when it hit New York City and out to Long Island, you know, everyone knew what I was doing, and they jumped on board. So people came out of the woodwork, and a lot of these trauma interviews were just people that wanted to meet me and tell their story. You know, they followed me and then walked with me, and then, you know, you saw the guy with the bandana, and he had a mask behind. That guy followed me for a while, and then he had enough courage to approach me, and that was before COVID, before there were masks. He lived his life with 2 masks on, one in the front and one in the back. So people like that just came to tell us their story. You know, there's a Sandy Hook guy. He just walked into the middle of me making a speech in Troy, New York, and just started talking. He just wanted to be heard. And most people, that's the case. They just
I want to add that, you know, again, it was, you know, something that Frank discovered when he went back to Cambodia, that documenting that journey, and he was zooming in his class at the time during that journey, that it was really effective. So he wanted to document not just us documenting his walk, but he was actually documenting himself on his camera. So a lot of that footage you saw was, you know, peace out from this town, was Frank just posting these, you know, videotaping these things on his phone and then posting them on social media. So we had this whole social media campaign going where Frank was really trying to like chronicle his journey on his own in addition to what we were doing. And a lot of people started following that. So as we got closer and closer east across New York, as the weather got better, the press got bigger and more people started coming out. So it really was just the nature of how it worked. And it was, by the time we got to Bay Shore, it was everyone in your town that wanted to be there to meet us. So.
Even though you documented everything, there were stories that weren't documented that you would tell us. Tell the story of the man, the homeless man that gave you half of all his possessions.
So I'm leaving Albany and I'm headed down kind of around Rhinebeck, New York, if you know New York, down the Mid-Hudson Valley. And there's this man picking cans and bottles up on the side of the road, you know, and so he's walking in the same direction I'm walking, and he's every once in a while he'd pick up a can and a bottle, and he put it in his little shopping bag, and we started talking, and we walked, I don't know, 3-4 miles together, and we're chit-chatting back and forth. And so it came around to what I was doing. I'm walking on behalf of homeless people and mental health. And he stopped. And he took his wallet out of his pocket. And he had 2 $1 bills. And the cans and bottles he was collecting, he was going to turn in and to buy food with it. And he had 2 $1 bills. And he took one out and gave it to me. You know, and he says, no, you take this because you're helping homeless and doing what you're doing. And he was homeless. And so he gave me half of everything he owned in life, if you think about it. And I took it because it was important for him. It was important for him to give me that $1, and I took it. And I'll never forget him.
And that's the kind of stuff that kills you as a filmmaker, because like, I wish I was there with a camera.
There were no cameras there,
story.
yeah.
But it's great to hear those stories.
The film's airing on PBS, so please get the word out. You know, anyone that couldn't make it tonight, let them know it's going to be screening. Check your local listings. It's different in every town.
It's also, we have an educational package that comes along with the film that we're, you know, trying to bring into universities, high schools, organizations. Frank has actually addressed therapists and at universities, people that are studying to be therapists and counselors. And
we'll be doing more of these across the state, so keep an eye out and get the word out.
And before we end, Frank, is there anything that, even if somebody in the audience was interested in getting involved in helping, is there any way that somebody can do that?
You can, if you have a question or you, so I don't claim to be a doctor or a clinician. I don't cure people. You know, I want to make that clear. I'm the advocate. I'm the guy out there opening his mouth, you know, and I tell my story, and if it helps, that's fine. If it doesn't help, well, you know, I can't make it help. So if there's anything, any kind of help you need, you can go to walkwithfrank.org. Our information, our contact information is on there, and reach out to me or one of us, and, you know, I'll direct you in the right direction. Just let me say that, you know, this project, Walk with Frank, is a nonprofit, a 501c3, for 30 years now, and I haven't taken a salary in 30 years, and these guys don't take a salary to do this either. So we're in this together. Anything you buy or purchase or donate outside, it goes to the Walk with Frank Foundation. I don't see any of it. And it goes to help us to get to the next Kirby Center, if you will. You know, it'll help us to get to another town and another state and travel across the country and get this message out, you know, and that's how it works. We're grassroots. We're in it together. You know.
Plus all the press, all the support that you guys have given us, it allows us to take this to another town. So,
correct.
Again, thank you all for being here. We just really greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you want to see more On the Stacks content, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/OnTheStacks podcast, or search the hashtag OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.